There was a time when trying was enough, when putting in effort, any effort, was admirable, when we could say, "At least I tried," and the world would nod in approval, but that time has passed. Today, the world doesn't slow down to wait for effort. It responds only to impact. It rewards clarity, execution, and purpose, because the truth is trying by itself is no longer the currency of growth. Doing is. You see, when we say we're trying, we create a safety net. It sounds responsible, but it gives us a way out. It's a softer word for "I haven't fully decided yet." We tell ourselves we're trying to improve, trying to start that business, trying to change, but trying doesn't create transformation. Commitment does. Think of the most meaningful achievements in history, in science, in leadership, in art. None of them came from people who were just trying. They came from people who were doing, even when doing was uncertain, uncomfortable, or unpopular. Trying is effort, doing is purpose in motion, and that difference, that small shift, changes everything. In our schools, our organizations, even in our personal lives, we've built cultures around effort. We praise people for showing up, for giving it a go. But the world we live in now demands more than just presence. It demands performance that matters. It demands that we take ownership, not just initiative. When you try, you leave the door open for failure. When you commit, you close the door and start building something inside. It's not about working harder, it's about working with intention. It's about asking, what is the purpose behind my effort? What am I aiming to change, to solve, to build? The ones who move the world forward are not necessarily the ones who try the hardest. They are the ones who stay the longest, learn the fastest, and adapt the quickest. So today, let's make a shift. Let's stop trying to become better and start committing to being better. Let's stop trying to make a difference and start making it. Because in a world that moves this fast, trying is just not enough anymore. But purpose, clarity, and commitment, those still are. Effort is one of the most celebrated virtues in human life. From childhood, we are taught that as long as we try, as long as we put in the work, we are doing something worthwhile. And while that belief once helped us build discipline and resilience, it has also created a subtle trap, the illusion that motion equals progress. In reality, effort without direction is like running on a treadmill. You're sweating, you're moving, but you're not going anywhere. Direction gives effort meaning. It transforms scattered activity into focused achievement. Imagine two people rowing in opposite directions with equal strength. Both are working hard, yet only one reaches the shore that matters. The difference isn't in their energy, but in their clarity. Without knowing why we are exerting ourselves and toward what end, effort becomes exhausting instead of empowering. It consumes time, drains motivation, and leaves us wondering why we feel busy but unfulfilled. Education systems, workplaces, and even social expectations often praise visible effort, the long hours, the extra assignments, the staying late, but rarely question whether those efforts are aligned with a larger vision. We have normalized being busy as being productive, but busyness, when disconnected from purpose, only accelerates confusion. It's not how much energy we expend that matters. It's whether that energy is taking us in the right direction. In an educational sense, students are often told to try harder. Teachers and mentors emphasize diligence, persistence, and practice, all vital traits, but without guiding students to understand what they're working toward and why it matters, those traits lose their impact. A student can spend countless hours memorizing information without grasping its meaning or purpose. The result is effort spent on repetition, not understanding, movement without mastery. The same principle applies to professionals. Many individuals put in years of hard work, showing dedication and effort, yet find themselves stuck in the same place. Why? Because effort alone doesn't guarantee progress. Without direction, people often repeat the same actions expecting different results. They are driven by the comfort of doing rather than the discipline of thinking. Direction demands reflection, self-awareness, and sometimes uncomfortable questions. Am I doing the right thing? Am I solving the right problem? Is this the best use of my effort? Direction also brings focus, and focus magnifies impact. A laser beam is simply light, but its concentrated direction allows it to cut through steel. Effort works the same way. When scattered across too many areas, it loses its power. When focused toward a clear goal, it becomes unstoppable. This is why purpose-driven effort always outperforms random action. Purpose acts as a compass, allowing us to prioritize, adapt, and persist intelligently. Direction prevents burnout. People often assume that burnout comes from working too hard. More often, it comes from working hard without seeing meaningful results. When we don't know where we're heading, every obstacle feels heavier and every delay feels pointless. Direction provides the why that keeps effort alive. When we know why something matters, we can endure more, innovate more, and stay motivated through setbacks. In leadership and personal growth, direction is the difference between activity and achievement. A leader who encourages effort without providing a clear vision only creates chaos. Teams may appear active, but their actions lack coordination and coherence. On the other hand, when effort is guided by a well-communicated purpose, even small actions align to produce big outcomes. Direction creates unity. It turns a group of individuals into a movement. To transform effort into progress, one must begin with clarity. Clarity comes from asking better questions. What does success look like? What problem am I solving? What values are driving this action? These questions help filter distractions and identify priorities. Every hour spent planning and aligning direction multiplies the value of the effort that follows. It's not about doing more, it's about doing what matters most. Effort without direction also limits learning. When we know our direction, failure becomes feedback. It tells us what to adjust. Without direction, failure feels final because we have no framework to interpret it. Purpose gives mistakes context. It turns them into lessons rather than regrets. The difference between those who grow and those who give up is rarely in how much they try, but in how clearly they understand their destination. In a rapidly changing world, where information is abundant and opportunities are countless, direction has become more critical than ever. Effort alone can no longer keep pace with complexity. We need thoughtful effort that begins with understanding, strategy, and a clear sense of value. Direction transforms trial into design, motion into momentum, and effort into evolution. Ultimately, the lesson is simple yet profound. Trying hard is not enough when you're unsure what you're trying for. Effort is powerful, but only when it knows where it's going. The real measure of progress isn't how hard we work, but how aligned our work is with what truly matters. Without direction, even our best efforts risk becoming just intentioned motion impressive, but aimless. Intention is the starting point of every meaningful action. It reflects our values, our purpose, and our desire to make a difference. But intention alone, no matter how noble, is incomplete. The world does not change because of what we intend to do. It changes because of what we actually do. The gap between intention and impact is where most individuals and organizations struggle. We often mistake good intentions for good outcomes, forgetting that the measure of effectiveness is not in what we plan, but in what we produce. When someone says, "I didn't mean to," it shows that their intention was positive, but their result was not. This happens everywhere, in classrooms, in workplaces, in relationships. We aim to help, to teach, to lead, but if our actions don't deliver the intended benefit, then effort becomes self-justification rather than service. Intention feels satisfying because it resides within our control. Impact, however, demands responsibility, awareness, and accountability for what our actions create in the real world. In education, for instance, teachers often have the best intentions. They want their students to succeed, to learn, to grow. But if the teaching methods are outdated, the lessons unrelatable, or the classroom environment unengaging, then the impact falls short. The intention remains admirable, but the result fails to meet the learner's needs. True effectiveness comes when teachers continuously align their methods with outcomes, adapting to how students learn rather than simply delivering what was planned. The same applies to students who intend to study hard. Without effective strategies, feedback, and time management, the intention never transforms into meaningful academic progress. In leadership, the intention to impact gap can be even more visible. A leader may intend to motivate their team, but if their tone creates pressure instead of inspiration, the result contradicts the goal. They may intend to encourage innovation, but if they react harshly to mistakes, they build fear instead of creativity. Leaders must constantly evaluate whether their actions are producing the intended emotional and practical results. It is not enough to say, "I meant well." Impact is the true reflection of leadership maturity. Intention without impact also reveals itself in social responsibility. Many organizations launch initiatives to make a difference, but without careful design and evaluation, these efforts can cause more harm than good. For example, donating large quantities of free products to developing communities may seem helpful, but it can undermine local businesses and create dependency. The intention to help must be paired with an understanding of long-term consequences. Real change happens when compassion meets competence, when good hearts are guided by thoughtful systems. Impact requires measurement and reflection. People with strong intentions often resist measurement because they fear it might devalue sincerity. But measuring outcomes doesn't challenge integrity, it strengthens it. It shows that we care enough to ensure that our actions truly serve their purpose. In education, this means assessing learning outcomes instead of assuming teaching effort equals learning success. In organizations, it means tracking not just employee satisfaction, but also the growth, innovation, and culture those efforts generate. Another dimension of this principle lies in personal growth. Many individuals intend to improve to be kinder, healthier, more productive, yet intentions remain wishes without structure. To translate intention into impact, one must move from desire to discipline. This involves setting measurable goals, establishing routines, and taking consistent action. A person who intends to be more empathetic must not only think about understanding others, but also listen more, interrupt less, and adjust communication accordingly. Impact is built on repeated intentional behaviors that produce observable change. Intention feels internal, but impact lives in the external world. The bridge between them is execution. Execution demands clarity, consistency, and courage. Clarity helps us know what we are aiming to achieve. Consistency ensures we stay committed when results are not immediate. Courage allows us to face feedback, revise our methods, and accept when our efforts are not working as expected. Without these, intentions stay locked within aspiration, never transforming into influence. In collaborative environments, aligning intention and impact also strengthens trust. When people see that your actions produce the outcomes you promise, they develop confidence in your reliability. Trust grows not from declared motives but from demonstrated results. Words build expectation, results build credibility. This principle applies universally in teaching, leading, serving, or creating. The difference between being well-meaning and being effective lies in whether your impact fulfills your intent. To close the gap between what we mean and what we do, awareness becomes crucial. Awareness of context, of others' perceptions, of evolving needs. Sometimes our actions create unintended consequences because we focus more on what we want to express than on how others might experience it. Empathy, therefore, becomes a key tool for aligning intention with impact. By understanding how our behavior affects others, we refine our methods without compromising our purpose. Ultimately, progress happens when intention evolves from being a personal statement into a collective benefit. It is not enough to say, "I tried to make a difference." We must ask, "Did I make the difference I intended?" Every idea, lesson, policy, or project should be examined through this lens. When intention is matched with impact, our actions stop being efforts and start becoming evidence of purpose, alignment, and meaningful change. Persistence is one of the most praised human qualities. It represents endurance, consistency, and the courage to keep going despite challenges. Yet, persistence without adaptation can become a silent obstacle. The world is changing faster than ever technologies evolve, knowledge doubles within years, and social and economic systems transform continuously. In such a dynamic environment, merely persisting is no longer enough. What was once considered strength can now become rigidity. The ability to adapt to learn, unlearn, and relearn is what defines progress in a modern context. Persistence focuses on staying the course. Adaptation focuses on refining the course. The two are not opposites, but persistence without adaptation becomes stagnation. For example, a student who studies diligently using outdated methods may persist in effort but fail to improve results. A company that continues to produce the same products with the same strategies may proudly claim persistence, but will soon become irrelevant. Adaptation means recognizing when the environment has shifted and having the courage to evolve our methods without abandoning our mission. In education, adaptation is what keeps learning alive. A teacher who insists on using the same curriculum, the same examples, and the same teaching techniques year after year may be persistent in commitment, but disconnected from the learners of today. Students change, technology changes, attention spans shift, and the world that learning prepares them for is not the same as it was yesterday. The educator who adapts, who experiments, integrates new tools, and responds to feedback transforms persistence into relevance. True mastery in teaching is not about repeating what has worked before, but about continuously reimagining how to make it work now. For students, adaptation is equally vital. Persistence in studying for long hours is valuable, but if the strategy doesn't lead to better understanding or retention, effort becomes misplaced. Learning how to adapt by analyzing what works, trying new approaches, seeking feedback, and modifying routines creates intelligent persistence. Adaptation turns the struggle of effort into the strategy of improvement. It reminds us that working harder is not as important as working wiser. In leadership, adaptation separates sustainable vision from stubborn ideology. A leader who holds tightly to old models of management underestimates the evolving expectations of people and systems. The workforce of today values autonomy, creativity, and meaning, not just direction and control. A leader who adapts listens, learns, and redefines success with their team rather than imposing static goals. This kind of flexibility does not weaken leadership. It strengthens it by aligning persistence of purpose with responsiveness to change. Adaptation also demands humility. It asks us to accept that what once worked may no longer work. Persistence can sometimes blind us with pride. We keep pushing a method simply because it's familiar or because it once succeeded. Adaptation invites us to let go of certainty and embrace curiosity. It is an acknowledgement that survival and success belong not to the strongest or the most persistent, but to those most responsive to change. This principle, often reflected in nature, applies equally to human growth and innovation. In business, entire industries have been reshaped by those who chose adaptation over persistence. Companies that clung to traditional models believing their old methods were enough vanished in the face of innovation. Meanwhile, those that adapted reinvented themselves. Adaptation is not just about reacting to change but anticipating it. It means seeing beyond the present and aligning actions with what the future demands. Persistence may keep us in motion, but adaptation ensures that motion leads to progress. Adaptation also transforms failure into feedback. Persistence might tell us to keep trying the same thing until it works, but adaptation tells us to examine why it isn't working and adjust. Every obstacle, Every mistake becomes an opportunity to learn something new. This mindset shift turns setbacks from barriers into lessons. In learning environments, this creates resilience that is intelligent rather than blind, a resilience built not on repetition, but on reflection. Psychologically, adaptation fosters growth mindset. Those who value adaptation see change as an opportunity rather than a threat. They understand that skill, knowledge, and performance are not fixed traits but evolving abilities. Persistence without adaptation can cause burnout and frustration because effort feels unrewarded. Adaptation brings energy and creativity into the process by offering new ways forward. It keeps motivation alive because it turns effort into exploration rather than endurance. In personal life, adaptation influences relationships, habits, and self-development. A person who persists in old communication patterns or fixed routines may find relationships and goals stagnating. Adaptation invites empathy and flexibility, the ability to adjust behavior, expectations, and perspectives as circumstances change. It teaches emotional intelligence, the awareness to sense when persistence becomes resistance and when change becomes necessity. Adaptation does not mean inconsistency. It means evolving with purpose. The core values remain the same, but the methods evolve to serve those values better. Just as a river persists in reaching the ocean but changes its course around rocks and mountains, adaptation allows persistence to find its way through uncertainty. The essence of success lies in maintaining the goal but modifying the path. Ultimately, in a world defined by innovation and unpredictability, the balance between persistence and adaptation determines growth. Persistence keeps us grounded in purpose. Adaptation keeps us aligned with reality. To persist without adapting is to repeat the past. To adapt without persistence is to lose direction. But when the two work together, persistence providing drive and adaptation providing intelligence, progress becomes inevitable, and change becomes our greatest ally. Trying is a word that feels comfortable. It gives a sense of effort without demanding full accountability. It suggests movement, but not necessarily direction. Commitment, on the other hand, is demanding. It requires discipline, sacrifice, and a decision to stay the course even when convenience disappears. While trying often exists in the space of uncertainty, commitment lives in the space of action. The difference between the two determines whether a goal remains a possibility or becomes a reality. When people say they are trying, they often mean they are exploring, testing the waters, keeping options open, waiting to see if conditions become favorable. It is a cautious mindset. Commitment removes that safety net. It replaces hesitation with ownership. Once you are committed, you stop asking whether it will work and start asking how to make it work. This mental shift from if to how separates those who wish from those who achieve. Trying is a statement of interest. Commitment is a declaration of intent. In education, the contrast is easily visible. A student who is trying to study may read, highlight, or attend classes, but does so without deep focus or consistency. Their effort is conditional, dependent on mood, motivation, or external reward. A committed student, however, operates differently. They study even when they don't feel like it. They plan, execute, and hold themselves accountable. Their success is not accidental. It is designed through structure and persistence. Commitment turns learning into mastery because it builds habits, not just efforts. For teachers and mentors, commitment goes beyond delivering lessons. It means being devoted to student understanding, not just content coverage. A committed teacher adapts methods, gives extra time, and keeps searching for ways to reach those who struggle. Trying might stop at "I did my best to explain." Commitment asks, did they truly understand? This difference creates transformational education, one that changes not just grades, but lives. In professional life, trying often shows up as effort without ownership. Employees might say they are trying to meet deadlines or trying to improve performance. But commitment demands a deeper level of engagement. It means taking responsibility for outcomes, not just participation. A committed individual doesn't wait for conditions to be perfect. They create progress under imperfect conditions. They make promises and keep them, even when circumstances change. This reliability builds trust and influence, turning ordinary workers into leaders. Commitment also defines leadership integrity. A leader who merely tries to support their team does so selectively, based on convenience. A committed leader does what is necessary, not just what is easy. They stand by their vision, communicate clearly, and follow through with action. Their team doesn't just hear their words, they see them lived. Commitment transforms authority into credibility. It builds cultures where people feel secure because they know their leader is unwavering in purpose. Psychologically, trying often allows room for excuses. When we fail while trying, we can say, "At least I tried." It protects our ego from disappointment. Commitment removes that shield. It replaces comfort with accountability. When you are committed, failure becomes feedback, not justification. Every setback is analyzed, every mistake learned from, because giving up is no longer an option. Commitment changes the internal dialogue from "I'll see what happens" to "I'll find a way." In relationships, the power of commitment is just as evident. Trying to be supportive, trying to listen, or trying to understand is fragile. It depends on how convenient the moment feels. Commitment means showing up even when it's difficult, maintaining consistency when emotions fluctuate. It's the difference between temporary effort and enduring presence. People trust those who are committed because they know that reliability is stronger than mood. In the realm of personal growth, commitment transforms aspirations into systems. Many people intend to exercise, to eat healthier, to learn new skills. They try for a few days, then stop when results are slow. The reason isn't lack of ability, it's lack of commitment. Trying relies on motivation. Commitment relies on discipline. Motivation fades, discipline sustains. Commitment means you act even when enthusiasm disappears because your actions are tied to values, not feelings. Commitment also provides clarity. When we are truly committed to something, decision-making becomes easier. Distractions lose their power because priorities are defined. A person who is merely trying must constantly choose between options, hesitating at every obstacle. A committed person doesn't need to decide whether to continue. The decision was already made. Their energy isn't wasted debating effort, it's focused entirely on execution. In teams and organizations, commitment creates cohesion. Trying might bring effort from individuals, but commitment aligns everyone toward a shared goal. It fosters accountability, the sense that success or failure belongs to everyone. This shared commitment produces resilience because collective purpose outlasts individual fatigue. It turns collaboration into synergy, where people push not because they must, but because they believe in what they're building together. From a broader perspective, commitment drives innovation and transformation. Many groundbreaking ideas faced resistance or failure in the beginning. The people behind them were not merely trying, they were committed. They kept refining, learning, and evolving until results matched vision. Commitment fuels perseverance with intelligence, ensuring that effort remains purposeful. It is the silent force behind every breakthrough, every invention, and every story of change. Trying keeps us safe, commitment moves us forward. Trying gives us reasons, commitment gives us results. The difference between both is not in the amount of effort, but in the quality of decision. Commitment means burning the bridges behind you not to limit escape, but to affirm direction. It means trusting that your consistent action will create the outcome you seek. Once that shift happens, you stop testing possibilities and start shaping realities.